All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another Future Focused weekly update. I'm your host, Christopher Lind, and if I am doing my job well, I am hopefully keeping you 10 steps ahead of what's happening at the intersection of business, technology, and human experience, and hopefully providing some insight and perspective that helps you navigate it well. To those of you who have been regular watchers, listeners, those that send me feedback, thank you for your continued support and engagement and all that good stuff. If you're new here, welcome. Hopefully you find it helpful. And to all of you, if you could share this, like it, do all that social stuff. And if you really find value and you feel so, please consider sharing financially on my Buy Me a Coffee to help support some of the costs of what goes into this. It would be greatly appreciated. Okay. So I've got three things that I want to run through today that I'm going to talk about. I'll give you a quick rundown of what those three are, and then we'll get into each one. The first one has to do with the use of ChatGPT for legal advice. Now, this one's going to be directed more to the users, not, what's going on in the legal world with it. There's some other things that I want to talk about related to that, but that's not going to happen today. The second one, I was going to do it last week. I wanted to give it a week to kind of see how everything shook out. I want to talk about the US's American AI Action Plan and some of the things that breaks down, what it means, what they're looking at with that, how China's responding, and just what do you do with it? Because I think it's one thing to see an executive order or see Trump sign something and then you go, okay, but what does this mean? How do I respond to it? So I'm going to talk about that, hopefully make it simple and hopefully prepare you for what's likely ahead. And then the last one is a really interesting safety report that came out of a company called Future of Life on how all the major models are performing in, I think it's 6 key areas. So I'll give you an update on the scorecard there, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so there you go. That's the rundown, what you can expect. You can obviously look in the show notes and see when the transitions happen and jump to all of them. Of course, I'm going to encourage you to check out the whole thing. But let's get started with number one. I came across an article this week that talked about, hey, if you're using ChatGPT for legal advice, you might want to stop. And as I spent more time thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it more on the business side because of some of the consulting work have been doing. And then really I went, oh, wait, wow, this is really good consumer information to make you aware of and thoughtfully consider. Now, I get as these conversational AI models start spinning up, more and more people are becoming, dependency is becoming a real problem, but also just in general, even if you're not dependent, we're becoming more reliant on them. We go to them for anything. And that is one of the big areas is we go to it for legal advice, or many people are now. And there's a hidden risk in this that I think many people are not considering. Now, the first one, I think most people hopefully know, and I warn people about this all the time. If you're asking AI for legal advice, that's dangerous in and of itself, given what I would consider catastrophic accuracy rate. So if you're trusting it to have a strong legal opinion, you might just want to be really careful about that, because there's a good chance what it's going to share with you is not accurate. Now, what I don't want to say, and I know lawyers tend to over-index on this and say, you should always talk to a lawyer, never talk to AI. I don't necessarily take that approach. I think just like it's not bad to look things up on Google or maybe get some initial perspective from the internet or things like that, bring it up in a forum, post about it on Reddit. Sure, there can be value in that. And if you're just trying to ground yourself in some of the legal general ideas of things, or have something explained to you in general on a legal standpoint to try and wrap your head around something, I don't personally, see any problem with that. Do you have to do it carefully? Yes. And honestly, I know a fair amount of lawyers who would agree with that as well, who would say, yeah, if you're trying to get a general sense of something or want to baseline something, we get not everybody just has funds to go ask a lawyer for every single question they have, nor do most lawyers want to deal with a lot of just the very basic stuff. It's not a good use of their time. So what I don't think well, definitely not from the article. The article didn't even talk about this, but even from talking with lawyer friends, other things like that, I don't think anybody, except some very extreme cases, would say avoid asking any sort of legal questions at all. Don't ever have ChatGPT help you draft a, contract, a first draft of something. If you're an independent company, starting your own consulting business, things like that. I don't think anybody would say never, don't ever do that kind of stuff. Recognize the risks you're dealing with. Recognize that there's a risk. What you're getting may not be telling the whole story. So are you looking for specific details, or are you looking for a general understanding? General understanding, AI is probably going to be generally correct. Hyper nuanced specific feedback or answers, yeah, probably, definitely not, type of a thing. And if you're really looking for that kind of support, then yes, I would say it's worth it. Go find a lawyer and actually get legal protection, legal advice from a lawyer. And like I said, I talked to enough lawyers, they would, I think in general, would say that same thing. If you are a lawyer and you're listening to this going, absolutely not, Christopher, I'm open to hearing your case. I just think sometimes the defensiveness of fear of people getting information from other sources freaks people out. And everybody's always like, tends to be like, I would rather have all the business type of thing. But you don't have that kind of time. I saw a lot of the same thing with the internet and healthcare as people started looking up stuff on their own. There can be value in doing this, but do so carefully. Now, that I think in general, there's a general understanding of that, but I wanted to reinforce it because assuming people already take all that into consideration, when some recent data I saw said less than 10% actually are engaging with Gen AI models. So we're still very early in the adoption phase. But I think the folks who are, at least you're understanding the risk there. But I want to reinforce that so that people know, hey, do so carefully. Okay. But the one that most people are not taking into consideration at all, if you are not aware, when you engage with a lawyer, there is what's called attorney-client privilege. There is legal protection to you for whatever you say. Now, you can like or disagree with it all you want, but it's just the way the legal system works. If you commit a crime, you can go tell a lawyer all the gruesome details of what you did, and they cannot do anything about that if you have legally retained them. They are protected. That conversation is protected. Those details are protected. They cannot bring that lawyer on the trial, and bring them up and say, you need to testify to what they told you. They are legally protected from that. Guess what's not? Your chat logs. Okay. So this is where I'm saying, if you're trying to get general legal advice, what do the courts think about these types of things or things like that? That's one thing. If you're sitting and you committed some serious crimes and you're trying to figure out what your legal defense is, everything you're typing in ChatGPT can be subpoenaed. Let that sink in for a minute. Like, how embarrassing is it going to be for some of these folks? Because this is going to start happening. How embarrassing is it going to be for those folks who thought they were so smart and thought they had a legal defense and they were all ready to go and they've played all their chips right, only to have the prosecution come in and go, I'd like to introduce the chat logs of the defendant as they detailed all the specifics of the crimes they committed that they are now on trial claiming they are not guilty of. I can tell you right now, that's going to blow up some people's defenses real quick, and it's worth being mindful of. Now, my first advice to anybody would be, don't be doing things you shouldn't be doing. Okay. And maybe that's just too, baseline, but honestly, the number of times I see people knowingly and willingly getting involved in things that they shouldn't, and then they're scrambling, trying to figure out how to clean up the mess. I'm like, you could have avoided that in the first place. But I understand that we all make mistakes, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and we find ourselves in situations that we would prefer not to be in. Well, keep in mind, if you decide to take that situation to any sort of AI model, that data now becomes submissive, whatever. It becomes I can't, the term just slipped my mind now, but you get what I'm saying. It can be subpoenaed. They can bring it into court. It can now be used as evidence against you. It's like if you get arrested and you run your mouth in the back of the cop car, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Anything you type in ChatGPT can and will be used against you in a court of law. So keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. And I say that about any sort of AI use. If there's something that you would not want being put on a newspaper article or brought into court or, told to whatever, don't put it into ChatGPT. You have no legal protection. And just because you turned on incognito mode doesn't mean jack squat. It doesn't. Whatever you do in and on an internet device is sticking around somewhere and at some point could be discovered. It's discoverable. Maybe that's the term I was looking for. I don't know. Lawyer friends, send me messages. Let me know how I did. I'd love the feedback. But it's discoverable. They can find it. They can dig it up. Now, granted, you may go, well, they're never going to. Maybe they won't. But do you really want to gamble with that? I would say probably not. There's a reason. There's a reason people involved in criminal activities have very highly paid lawyers that they call all the time and do not, talk about in public areas. There's a reason that they do that. Now, to be clear, I am not encouraging illegal activity. Okay. In fact, I hopefully made it very clear. My advice to you would be don't do stuff. Just don't. Avoid it at all costs. From where I'm coming from a worldview, I would say flee from all sin. But I would just say in general, stay away from stuff that's going to get you in trouble. However, put in the back of your mind now that everything, and this, in my opinion, this doesn't just apply to the law. Okay, this could apply to anything. Do you really want what you're discussing, what you're asking of ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever? Would you want that being viewed or seen in a public forum? If not, don't put it in there. It's a simple lesson. But having looked at this one, when I came across the article, I went, yeah, I'm quite confident very few people, as we become much more comfortable with this. And really, if you look at any sort of true crime, to all my true crime friends out there, look at any true crime show. How do people end up getting caught? They get comfortable with things they shouldn't be comfortable with, whether it's routine, whether it's, whatever. And that's what's happening with these AI products right now. We're getting comfortable with them. They're becoming an extension of us. And as a result, we assume that, well, whatever we tell it is between us and that's it. And that's just not true. It doesn't hold up in court. It doesn't hold up even in just a general sense. So moral of the story is don't talk to GPT or AI about things that you wouldn't talk to someone in a public forum about, because there is a chance it could come back to bite you. And if you're saying, well, I'm just going to gamble on that chance, that's fine, but recognize it could come back to bite you. And this could be something as simple. It doesn't necessarily have to be you're running a drug ring. It could be something like you're going through a divorce and you're sitting here sharing all the details of all your, what you're thinking about, what you're trying to do. Could be you're debating how to get out of a parking ticket type of a thing. Now, here's what I don't like, though, that I think we need to be careful of. And then I'll end this one. In some ways, this is being positioned as this really bad thing specific to AI. Just so you know, whatever you do on Google, do you know how many criminals have been caught because they subpoenaed people's search records? This isn't just AI. It's not like AI magically did. I think AI is making people more vulnerable to it because it's more comfortable, it's easier, it's whatever. But people have been getting caught because they Googled stuff. There was a lady I just saw recently that, poisoned her ex-husband's family, and a bunch of them died with mushrooms, and they caught one of the big damning pieces of evidence was her Google search history. So it's not necessarily just an AI problem. It's the fact that what you do on the internet is technically public record. in the right case. If somebody really wants that information, they can get it. So that would be the only thing I would say. If you hear this and go, yeah, see, AI is a problem. I don't think AI really is the problem. What AI is doing is what I say it always does. It amplifies and accelerates whatever is already happening within us, within society. So people are already doing this. They trust the internet for everything. They go there, they talk to it about whatever they want. They look up whatever they want. They think that by throwing a VPN and a, Brave browser or whatever, Brave search results, like somehow they're protecting themselves, and they're not. You're just channeling your search results through certain providers that if somebody really wants to get to it, they can. So ultimately the real solution, that's why I say the real solution is just don't do stuff. But I understand that's an oversimplification. So I wanted to shine a light on it and say, just be really careful. Okay. If you're involved in any sort of legal matters or potentially getting into any legal matters, be really careful what you put into AI models, especially if you're at work. If you're asking Microsoft Copilot about how to fight your employer with your case on, hostile workplace, don't do it. Just don't do it. Okay. All right. Be careful, folks. Okay. So let's move on to one of the biggest things. I can't remember exactly when it was signed. I think it was last week or something like that. Trump's AI action plan. It's a 23-page document. If you want, I'd recommend you go out and take a look at it. It's a lot of political rhetoric and a lot of that other stuff out there. So I get sometimes people are like, oh, well, I would encourage you to at least go beyond the headlines. I'm going to try and unpack it a little bit more, but I don't expect people to look to me as their core source of truth. I would encourage you to go read the document, go, get some other perspectives on it. Fact check me. If I get something off or whatever, you can share it with me. You can disagree with me. I welcome the conversation. But here's what essentially some of the biggest things that were in it. So it's a 23-page document, a fairly quick read. I've looked through some of the things on it and got a general sense of what it means. And I have some concerns. All right, I'll be honest, I have some real concerns about it on a macro scale. So I'm going to talk about what it means, some of the implications I think we've got to watch out for, and how to respond to it. But some of the biggest things it outlines are one of our major economic goals. I mean, in short, the U.S. is throwing everything at AI. Okay. I mean, am I being hyperbolic? Sure. But in many ways, not really. The AI Act, I can't remember his exact quote, but Trump said something like AI is genius. Okay. So this act reinforces that belief that AI is the solution to pretty much all of our problems, I guess. And so as a country, we're going to invest accordingly. If you believe something is the solution, if you believe it is genius and can solve every problem that you have, I would understand why you would feel it is wise to throw all the resources you have into it. I don't agree with the conclusion, but I can understand how someone would come to that conclusion. Now, there are several key things in it that it's focusing on. One is this desire for the U.S. to spark its economy, like boost its economy. It's largely how we think we're going to justify these tariffs. And by the way, before I go any further, I want to be really clear. I don't have a political dog in this fight. So to the folks who are going to blow me up and say, Christopher, you're too right-leaning, I'm not right-leaning. To the folks who say you're too left-leaning, I'm not left-leaning. I truly am politically homeless. So if you get this sense of, aha, this tells me how Christopher votes, without saying anything else, I'm going to say you're wrong on that. Okay. So I'm trying to be as objective and balanced as I can. So please don't get triggered by what you think I'm, pushing for with this. All right. Back to the show. So there are some key things that it's focusing on. One is to stir our economy and justify some of these tariffs that we're putting on these other countries by exporting American AI technology. That is going to be one of our biggest industrial solutions that we are going to offer to the world and make gobs and gobs of money on. Is we are going to export our AI tech stack, and everyone in the world is going to want to buy American AI. Okay, it's the Industrial Revolution in some ways all over again. It's like, hey, 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever, like we have the best AI, so everybody's going to want it. They're going to want to be using it. They're going to want to be dependent on it, and it's going to make us loads of money. Okay, so that's a big part of it. One is preventing woke AI in the government. And, don't let that trigger you. But, obviously there's a lot of political language around that. I think if you were to take out all of the rhetoric and the political charge, it's an effort to try and make sure that, AI is not biased. I think would be a less politically charged way to put that. Now, don't for a second say, oh, Christopher, so are you saying you think that it's actually working towards neutrality? I do not. Okay, so we'll get into my implications on this. But that's what it's stating. Hey, we don't want AI that's bent towards a specific bias, which in theory, I don't think is bad. Execution's a different story. The other one is advancing our AI in education for young people. So really bringing up American youth in AI, which again, inherently may not necessarily be a bad thing. I think it's important that youth understand how technology works, how it's changing things, what they do with it. But what it means to throw everything at jamming AI into the educational system for young people, given things, I think inherently brings a lot of risks. One had to do with like the federal procurement process, like restoring, I think one was like restoring common sense. Of course, the language is always intentionally divisive. So just be careful with that, especially if you read it and you get triggered by political stuff. Just know you're going to be pissed off when you read this. Okay, you will. You're going to be mad. But try and see what's underneath it and try and think about what's underneath it. So some of it is, how does the U.S. buy, spend, things like that. Again, I don't think inherently bad. I think it is good that we have solid processes and procedures for how we buy and sell goods and the way the government handles that. Fine. And then removing barriers to leadership. So this is a lot to do with, again, if you believe AI is the solution to everything, then you are going to want to remove any potential barriers that may slow down people from being able to advance the technology or adopt and integrate it. Okay, so that's another one. And then the initial recessions of harmful executive orders, that was kind of not necessarily related to AI as much, but you get the gist of it. Okay, so one, really, we're going to try and sell AI as our primary, industry good to the rest of the world. We really, and there, the one I skipped was the really effort to accelerate data center building. So we're going to see a ton of that. Then preventing the woke, the language, removing bias, emphasis on the American youth education and AI, common sense to procurement, and then removing barriers to leadership, like removing the barriers that we have to this. I think the implications of this are, quite frankly, a little bit terrifying. Okay. And you're going to see that when I get to my third point, which is some of the data coming back on the safety index. All right. We are literally preparing ourselves to throw all that we have at AI. And there's already lots of language related to this. And we're laying the framework for a cultural movement of believing that AI is the solution to everything is patriotic. And if you don't believe it, you are anti-patriotic, which again, to me, sets the ground for some just very dangerous thinking, because then we turn technology into a political statement instead of assessing it for what it can do and the risks associated with it and how effective is it. It just becomes, you have to support this if you're a good, XYZ political party. You have to support this if you love America. And I want, from a respond to that, I would encourage everybody to not get sucked into that, because this is going to ramp up very quickly. And so I would encourage everybody to step back and not get sucked into that vortex of, AI it shows how much you love America. No, it does not. If you are concerned about risks, if you are raising risks, if you are not comfortable running headfirst into AI adoption, you're not anti-American. Conversely, if you are all for AI and think there's too much bureaucracy, you are not aligned with XYZ political party. And I think we need to be really, really careful of this. So I would encourage everybody to just step back and watch that, because I firmly believe we are going to pour gasoline all over this. And as if we need any more division among each other, we don't need to divide among each other because of our views on AI. Okay. We just don't. So please be careful. Just because somebody says they're all for AI, don't assume that they are, in support of the Trump administration. If they say they are, concerned about where we're going with AI, don't assume that they hate the Trump administration. Don't think you're wearing an American flag and proud to be an American because you support AI, or you're a terrorist because you don't. And I think that may sound extreme, but I really do think, based on where this is going, especially given some of the global political geopolitics associated with it, that is a real risk we need to all be mindful of and need to be paying attention to in ourselves, that we don't get sucked into this, because it's coming. I have concerns for where this is going to go, because when we just start saying this at all costs, which is largely what this is saying. I mean, when you look at it and think about this from a macro level, we're saying, let's pour this into our American youth. Let's indoctrinate them with AI is genius and is the solution to every problem. When you say this is going to become our biggest economic factor, the success of the American economy is going to be based on our ability to export and sell AI technology. And, we have to do whatever we can, which means building massive data centers that are massively power hungry, do, some serious stuff to the environment and just the local economies. Who cares? In the name of patriotism, we have to do it. When you say every company in the world, any barrier to this, we don't got time for safety inspections. We don't got time to see what are the long-term implications of this. We have to win this AI race. That doesn't end well. Okay. So I have concerns about where this is going. And I think everyone needs to be taking this seriously. And more so, like I said, you may go, well, what am I supposed to do about this? I can't change you're right. You may not. But you can control, one, how you respond. You can control how you vote. You can control, where and how you voice your opinions on things. So, if somebody's going to build a data center in your hometown, you might want to go, have a conversation about it. You might want to raise your voice. You might want to try and, say, hey, we're not okay with this, or at least make sure you're informed before you just go, we are going to let them do this in the name of America type of a thing. Okay. So we all need to be thinking critically. And I think that's one of the other big implications. If you are waiting on the institutions, the organizations, if you're waiting on someone else to protect you from the fallout of AI, this AI action plan is a clear indication that day is not coming. It's not coming. So, if anything, it is now more than ever your responsibility to take ownership of how you respond, how you engage with, how you adopt, how you think critically about the use of AI. It is on you. And if you do not take that responsibility seriously, just know the entire cultural current is going to be do whatever you can and don't ask questions. And if you're someone who asks questions, you are a problem to the system. Okay. So it's how far this goes. I'm not trying to stir up, oh my gosh, if you speak out about your concerns about AI, you're going to get silence. Like, no, that is not helpful. But what I am saying is that there's going to be tremendous pressure to just say AI is wonderful. It's the best thing ever. We should do whatever it takes and not consider the costs and who cares who gets hurt in the process, because this is how we win. And that's the environment that we're walking into right now. And so you have to take responsibility for that, knowing there's probably going to be a lot that's outside of your control, but there's still a lot that is within your control. And I think you're going to have to think through some of the ethical and moral implications of AI. How do you feel about that? Think about it from the education system. If this moves forward and we say kids are going to be, pushed with AI first and AI everything, and you're a parent, you're going to need to decide, how are you going to respond to that? I don't have the answers, just to be clear. I may have feedback on specific situations. If people ask me follow-up questions, I will absolutely have guidance or perspective or things to think about. But I'm not going to come to anybody and go, so here is what you need to do. Here is what you should do in response to this. I'm going to give you the guideposts and say, right now, indicators are it's AI. America is AI at all costs, no matter what. And anybody who says anything otherwise is a friction point to be dealt with. So that's where we're headed. So just know that you're going to be swimming against that current if you choose not to participate in it. And I think based on the next update I have, there are a lot of good reasons we should be swimming against that current. And I would encourage everyone to swim against that current. Now, swimming against that current does not mean, take radical action. Absolutely not. I don't think radical action is ever a wise move. I'm not saying, be anti-AI. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're going to need to start doing this. And if you're waiting on a company or a government to tell you what to do, I'm telling you what it's going to tell you to do. Right now, I'm telling you based on this AI action plan, this is what the institutions, this is what organizations, and this is what everyone is going to tell you to do. So the question is that what you want to do? Is that what you're going to participate in? And if not, how are you going to respond? Okay. And I think you need to think through those things right now. And I think you need to think through them carefully because more and more they are going to have implications. And I think we're just going to see this continue to rise. And so if you didn't think this AI thing was serious, it definitely is. Now, to give some context to what is fueling this is China, as would expect, 3 days after the US released theirs, China released their action plan. Now, the difference is theirs is a global action plan. America's is very much the American AI action plan. In true American arrogance, the US is going to do it all by themselves. They don't want to participate, and they don't want anybody's help because we're America. We're the best. We can do it all on our own, and help is weakness. China responded with, their own version of it, and theirs is much more of a cooperative. It's using a lot of terms. It's global partnership, global governance, all this other stuff. Now, before anybody in the comments or the nasty messages I get somewhere else says, oh, so you're pro-China. That is not what I'm saying, okay? I don't for a second think that China's AI action plan is somehow good and inherently well-intentioned, because there's an internal version of it that isn't the public one. And I'm very aware of the fact that there's a whole arms race going on right now. And AI is the new nuclear weapon, right? We're entering a Cold War era, except AI is the weapon that everybody's trying to tackle. So I don't for a second think America's approach bad, China, oh, good, and we should, be on board with that. What I'm saying is this is what's fueling this, is we've got some geopolitical stuff going on, which is what's pouring gasoline all over this, as China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, are working to figure out what the future looks like. And of course, America's, trying to do its own thing. Now, I'm not a political commentator, so I'm not going to get into the geopolitics of all this stuff, but there are factors that are affecting this. And so I'm giving you this heads up. So when you start to see some of the things that are going to start coming about how important it is to get on board with this, how important it is to fully embrace the American AI action plan and embrace where we're going with technology, and to be a good citizen and, fully surrender to whatever it is that needs to be done. Just know that that's where some of this stuff is coming from. Now, I am a firm believer that we're called to be good citizens, in the exception of where, we're being asked, if we are ever asked to do something that just truly is in full violation of what we think is right. So, we're all going to have to navigate what it means to walk this. Don't say, well, Christopher, what's your universal position on how we respond? I probably will not have one, other than you got some work to do ahead of you right now. And so I wanted to take some time to talk about this, because it is serious, and this is going to only ramp up more. So my response, what should you do with this? One, get to know what it is. I think for most people, what I described is probably the level of detail that you need to know. Fact check it though. You can go check it out. And like I said, you're going to get pissed off when you read it, because there's all sorts of political language in our politics. And so I wanted to strip that out and just say, hey, here's what it's saying. Here's what I think the implications are. That's neutral. Like, I have opinions on those things, but that's what it's saying. You now need to do the work to go, okay, now how do I feel about this? What do I think we're going to see? And I'm going to be watching what the connection points to this are. I'm already seeing things be deregulated all over the place. I'm already seeing companies being incentivized to, use AI and come up with AI solutions. And, there's some potential good that I guess could come out of this, but we're all going to need to do some work to figure out how we respond. All right, now let me transition to number 3, because this is where I get uneasy about AI being called genius. Now, if you go to futureoflife.org, they recently came out with an AI safety index. It's basically a report card of how the biggest AI models are performing across 6 different categories. So the 6 different categories were risk assessments, current harms, safety frameworks, existential safety, governance and accountability, and information sharing. So, let me give you a quick rundown of what those 6 actually mean on there. So like the risk assessment is, what is the company's way of identifying and assessing risk? Like, for their models, they're just kind of looking at, hey, how are you evaluating the models to see where there are risks? And do we feel that, they're adequate for what they're doing? Current harms is, how are these models performing in overall safety outcomes rather than what they're just asked to do for benchmarks, things like that. Like, what is the potential that these models could in current state, what are the chances that they're going to pick a harmful outcome over what's best, right? Where are they going to deviate? The safety frameworks have to do with how they are, the company's perspective on designing safety into the platform. What are the frameworks and established protocols for how they ensure safety is there? Existential safety has to do with what are the company's positions in managing extreme risks from future AI? Like, what are they doing to prevent existential problems with AI in the future? Governance and accountability has to do with, well, what kind of accountability structures are in place to make sure they actually stick to all this stuff. It's one thing to say, yes, we prioritize safety, we prioritize these safety frameworks. Okay, but what happens if it comes out you aren't following any of that? Is there any sort of accountability in place? What happens if, how are you protecting whistleblowers to make sure that they can come out and say, hey, and you're not just squelching them down and shutting them up with a, settlement or something like that. And then how are they sharing information? How open are they with sharing the information they have about their AI models? And so what they did is they went through and they assessed 7 major AI models: Anthropic, OpenAI, Google DeepMind, xAI, which is Grok, Meta, Zipu AI, and DeepSeek. So 2 Chinese models, primarily Chinese models, and then 5 of the big US ones. And let's just say the report card, if I got this report card, I probably would have been grounded for a very long time. Okay. And I would highly encourage you. It's a long document, just so you know, it's like 101 pages, but you can quickly go to the executive summary and see, hey, how are we doing overall? Anthropic got the best grade out of everybody, which was a C plus. Okay. So the very best grade we got was a C plus. Then it went down to F. Now, I think there's definitely some bias built into this because ironically, the American, AIs got way better grades than the Chinese AIs. Now, granted, I did look at their methodologies. And so I do think, even just from some of the other things I've seen, I don't think they just went, how do we make Chinese AI look bad? But I think when you look at some of this stuff, it's like, I don't think it's totally neutral. So don't for a second think I'm looking at this going, this is perfectly neutral. But the fact that a C plus was the best grade, then it went into C's, C minus, OpenAI was a C, Google DeepMind was a C minus overall. Then we got into Grok, which was a D, matched by Meta, which was a D. And then both Chinese models got Fs. Not great. And the even more concerning part is that the safety frameworks and the existential safety was actually one of the lowest categories. So considering, hey, do we have frameworks in place for making sure that these models are designed with safety and the best interests of the end users in mind? Not real good. Existential safety, like, hey, do we have plans in place in case something goes off the rails, or do we know what we would do if something blows up? Actually, highest grade there was a D. So that one was really bad. And, you can all go, oh, well, that's never going to happen. That's what everybody says till it does. And unfortunately, what the report card showed is when it does, which it will at some point, basically nobody's prepared for what we'll do. Anthropic was the only one that really even had any governance and accountability. Everyone else was a C minus or below, which I think is extremely discouraging because it means that even all the other ones, all the other categories, you go, hey, but they got an A in this or an A in their current harms and all this. And it's like, right, but they don't have any governance or accountability in place. Should that change? Or if they say we're going to do this and then something goes sideways, there's really nothing in place to hold them accountable to any of this stuff. So what I would say, if you look at this, because it's discouraging. I will be the first to say this wasn't news to me. I've been close to some stuff and have been trying to warn people like, guys, this stuff it's not genius. All right. AI is not genius. It's not the best thing since sliced bread. It's not going to solve all of the world's problems. And at the end of the day, there's still people behind it. So as messed up as we are, now you're talking about amplifying the messed upness of the people in charge and the people making decisions with AI that clearly is messed up, like C plus best grade out of all of them. So I don't talk about this to incite panic or to make anybody freak out or anything so much as to say, listen, look, if you are buying the hype that AI will fix everything, that AI is inherently good, is going to solve your problems, is going to make your life better, is in your best interest, and that these companies are thinking of your best interest, and the products they create are going to work with you to bring out your best, by default, they're not. They're not. And this, I think, further highlights just how risky what we're playing with is. I think what's most concerning to me, given 5 of these players are US based and this new AI Act, where we have the lowest grades on this scorecard now became even less of a priority than they already were. So while, the highest grade on a safety framework was a C and an existential safety was a D, I would be interested to watch where this report is. This came out in July, just this month. I would be curious to see where it is next year. I would wager a bet that we're going to watch those categories drop. And I think current harms are going to get worse because we're learning more and more about how this stuff is affecting people. And a lot of the information sharing is going to, I just think in general, we're going to see these scores drop, not move up, which I think is equally concerning. So with that, one of the other how to respond, this just goes back to the AI action plan. To me, reinforces if you're waiting on the government to protect you from the harms of AI, the government is not going to. This validates that if you're waiting on the AI companies to protect you from the harms of AI, the AI companies are not going to protect you from the harms of AI. You have to take ownership and responsibility of your AI use, the dependency and trust you put in AI, the way you use AI, what you do with it, how much you share with it, what you let, where you let it into your life, where you don't. You are going to have to take responsibility for that. And if you don't, it is going to take you for a ride. And it's not a ride you're going to like at all. That much I can promise you. So if you still are at this stage where you're kind of sticking your head in the sand, if you're hoping it's just going to get better, it's not. It's not. So as I wrap up the entire thing, I know that a lot of these can feel really heavy. I do want to at least close on an encouraging note in that it doesn't have to be this way. And I get all signs look like it does. It's like, oh, great. Well, now the government's going this way. The AI companies just got a bad scorecard, and now they're being incentivized to not really do anything about it in the name of progress. Like, Christopher, that sounds to me like just a terrible road ahead. Yeah, in many ways, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, no, it's okay. It's all good. It's bad. It's bad. However, be encouraged that one, it doesn't have to be this way. And you may go, well, you just said, all the big companies and one of the world's largest governments is going that direction. That is true. But you underestimate how much control and power you still have over your own life, over what you choose to do and the steps you take. And, okay, so first of all, one, you've got that. You have way more control than you recognize. You are not just a ship out in the sea tossed by the waves. You have the ability to make choices and to do things with this. And nobody can make you use AI for certain things. We just happen to be finding it so convenient. We're handing it over the keys to our life savings and our, houses. You don't have to do that. You can use it wisely. So one, you have a lot more control than anybody would let you be. And I think right now is the time to be attentive. What are you getting hooked up into? What are you teaming up with? Where are you, getting over dependent on this stuff? Where are you trusting it with stuff you shouldn't? Hopefully this episode made you think twice about some of that stuff. But I think the other thing is there is so much really good stuff AI can help you do. And I probably need to maybe do an episode where I highlight some of the really positive stuff that I see, because I recognize that a lot of times it can just feel like, good grief, this just sounds bad. I am seeing AI used for really wonderful, incredible advancements. I'm seeing it improve people's capabilities. I'm seeing it help them accomplish things they couldn't before. So it's possible. And I think that's what gives me hope and encouragement, and hopefully encourages you, is that you have the ability to not walk this path. Is it going to become harder and harder and harder? Yes, it absolutely is. The cultural pressure to conform to this just self-destruction is going to grow, but you don't have to participate in it. And not only do you not have to participate in it, you can still participate in the use of AI to make things better, to make a difference, to improve yourself, to improve the people around you. That is still possible. And so hang on to that. And like I said, maybe I'll try and do something on a little more positive note to try and help highlight some of those, because I do understand it's becoming harder and harder to see that. And I have the opportunity to see that a lot more. So it's easier for me to talk about some of this heavy stuff and go, okay, like, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. There's no denying it's bad. But I see this other stuff that helps me balance it out. My worldview helps tremendously as well. But anyway, with that, if you need help with this, if you're a company, if you're an individual looking for help, all this other stuff, like this is what I do professionally. I coach, I advise, I consult on all of this stuff. I have ways to help people assess how ready are you to use AI? How effective are you? What areas of opportunity should you be looking at in yourself to be able to navigate this? I can help with this, and I would like to. So if you need help or you know someone that does, please reach out. Happy to have a call and see if there's a way that we can help each other out, because we've got some interesting waters to navigate in the future here, but it doesn't mean that it has to go sideways. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your week and a great week.